Hello, nice to see you on my channel, Hearts and Shadows. Enjoy watching.
My name is William. I'm 27 years old, and right now I'm single. That wasn't always the case, though. A few months back, I was in a relationship that drained the life out of me more than it gave me peace. At first, it felt like any other normal relationship with the usual arguments. But over time, I started to notice a pattern that slowly chipped away at my sanity. Every time we had a disagreement or misunderstanding, she wouldn't talk to me, sometimes for days. It was her way of punishing me. And if I tried to bring up my feelings or say I didn't like how she handled conflict, she twisted back on me. That kind of emotional roller coaster messes with your head. I'd find myself apologizing just to keep the peace, even when I wasn't the one at fault. Eventually, the emotional manipulation became open disrespect. She started saying hurtful things. I was always on edge, always wondering what I'd done wrong this time. So I made a decision and ended it. It wasn't easy, but I walked away. And since then, I've kept my focus tight on one thing: work. I buried myself in it, and I started pushing harder than ever, taking on out-of-state assignments, staying late, saying yes to tight deadlines. I figured if I wasn't going to give my time and energy to a person who didn't value it, I might as well give it to something that could pay off, like getting promoted. One Thursday afternoon, my phone rang. It was my sister calling from New York. She's older than I by just a year, and ever since she got married and moved up there, our conversations have been more spaced out, but still meaningful. We usually check in on each other, share life updates, and laugh at old jokes. But this time, we hadn't spoken in over a week. I answered the call. We exchanged our usual hellos and quick catch-ups, but something in her tone told me this wasn't just a regular sibling chat. There was something she wanted. She said, "I need a favor." I told her to go ahead and ask, already wondering what it would be. She told me her friend was moving into a new place and could use some help with the process. Right off the bat, I wasn't exactly jumping at the idea. In fact, I was uninterested. I work full-time, and weekends are often my only window to breathe or catch up on errands. So I asked, why doesn't she just hire movers or something? That's when my sister explained that the friend had just finalized a divorce and didn't have the resources to hire a moving company. Things were rough. Hiring professional help just wasn't on the table for her right now. That got me quiet for a second. I asked who the friend was, and the moment she said Madison, the name brought back memories. I hadn't heard or thought about Madison in so long, but I knew exactly who she was. I was speechless because Madison used to hang around our house back in the day and sometimes sleep over in my sister's room. She was older by 2 years, and I had a massive crush on her that I never dared to act on. She was everything I thought a woman should be: kind, mature, and confident. And hearing her name again out of nowhere just stirred something I didn't expect. Trying to play it cool, I asked why the marriage ended. My sister, sounding a little heavier this time, said Madison and her husband had gone through 2 stillbirths. She said the man started blaming Madison, like the losses were her fault. That's what caused the marriage to start falling apart. My stomach sank a little hearing that. No one should have to endure that kind of pain, let alone carry the blame for it. I asked when Madison was moving, and my sister said it would be that Saturday. I glanced at the calendar in my mind and realized it was still Thursday. So I told her I'd think about it and let her know by Friday if I could make it. She thanked me and hung up. But after the call, I couldn't concentrate on anything else. My thoughts kept circling back to Madison. It's hard to explain how much I liked her back then. It was a kind of quiet admiration that lived rent-free in my chest for years. I remembered how much it stung when I found out she got married. And now I find out she's divorced, hurting, and starting over. That knowledge stirred a strange mix of feelings in me. On one hand, I had a lot going on with work, but on the other hand, how could I ignore the chance to help someone I once cared so deeply about, even if it was from a distance? For the rest of that Thursday, I couldn't stop thinking about her. After a long week, I finally wrapped up work on Friday evening. Although my body was craving rest, I remembered the promise I'd been turning over in my mind since Thursday. I picked up my phone, typed a short message to my sister, and hit send. "I'll help Madison tomorrow." Saturday morning came quicker than I expected. I showered, dressed up, and headed to the address my sister had sent. I got there a few minutes past 7. The neighborhood was quiet. I parked outside her place and waited. Almost an hour later, Madison pulled up. Her car was packed, and the second she stepped out and saw me, she stopped mid-step. A mix of surprise and guilt flashed across her face. "You've been waiting?" she asked. I nodded. She apologized immediately for keeping me out there so long. I just shrugged and said, "It's fine. Let's get started." We began unloading her things. Most of the items were boxed up, labeled in handwriting I assumed was hers. It wasn't overwhelming, but it was enough to make us sweat. We carried everything piece by piece. As we worked, we tried talking. Every now and then, she'd say something that made us both laugh. She focused mostly on organizing her personal things. I stuck to the heavier lifting. By the time evening rolled around, most of the work was done. I told her I was heading out. That's when she smiled. Then she reached out and gently took my hand. She looked me in the eye and said, "Thank you, not just for helping me move, but for being warm about it." I didn't know what to say at first. I just smiled back and told her I'm glad I could help. And then I added that I'd come by again tomorrow with some tools to tighten the loose screws in her cabinets and drawers. She thanked me again, and I left. When I got back home that Saturday evening, I couldn't help but think about Madison. She still looked as beautiful as I remembered her back in the day. But I didn't let my mind wander too far. I reminded myself she's fresh out of a divorce. She may have smiled a lot today, but I could still sense something underneath. I had to be careful not to confuse her kindness or our familiarity for something more. I didn't want to complicate her healing or misread the situation. So I made up my mind. I'm just helping, and that's it. By Sunday evening, I headed back to her place like I said I would. I knew tightening a few loose screws in the cabinets and drawers wouldn't take long. I expected another quiet, simple visit. But when she opened the door, she was brighter and warmer than the day before. She seemed more relaxed and was nice to see. I got to work right away, toolbox in hand. As I was crouched in front of the bottom kitchen cabinet, adjusting the hinges and screws, this rich smell started filling the air. It didn't take me long to realize what she had been cooking. It was spaghetti and meatballs. It had been a while since anyone had cooked something that smelled that good around me. By the time I was putting the last screw in place, she'd already set the table. 2 plates, proper silverware, and even napkins. She looked at me and said, "I made this to thank you." I was shy about it. I didn't come expecting a meal. But the truth was, I hadn't had a proper homemade dinner in months. Maybe longer. Takeout and microwave meals had been my routine since the breakup. So I nodded, smiled, and sat down. As we ate, the conversation stayed light. We started talking about when we were younger, back when she used to visit my sister at our house. Madison looked at me and tilted her head, smiling. "You've really grown," she said, half laughing. Look at you. Nothing like that lanky boy I used to know." I laughed, a little embarrassed, but flattered. I told her she hadn't lost anything either. "You still look beautiful," I said. I caught her cheeks turning just a shade pinker as she looked down at her plate. We kept talking, switching between memories and life updates. She asked about my job, and we joked a little about how my sister used to complain about our school habits. It was easy, the way we talked. It's just 2 people catching up over a meal that felt like home. I didn't think too deeply into it at that moment. I was just grateful to be there, grateful for her kindness, and honestly, it felt good to be seen. After we finished eating, Madison stood up, walked over to a cabinet, and pulled out a bottle of wine. She held it up and smiled, saying it was another way of thanking me. Honestly, I don't really drink, not out of some strict principle, just never got used to it. But in that moment, it felt like saying no would ruin the ease we had built over dinner. I didn't want to make things awkward or seem ungrateful, so I nodded, took the glass she poured for me, and thanked her. We sat back down, glasses in hand, and our words started to come out a little easier. Madison leaned back in her seat and started talking about the signs she had ignored during her marriage. I didn't interrupt as I listened. She mentioned how my sister had once asked her some hard questions, not to judge, but to help her see what she'd been avoiding. Madison said those questions stayed with her, bouncing around in her mind, until one day she realized she was holding onto something that had already let go of her. At some point, the conversation shifted. She tilted her head at me and asked, "So are you seeing anyone?" I chuckled, shook my head, and told her no, I wasn't. She grinned and asked if I was one of those guys who break hearts for fun. I laughed harder than I expected and told her I definitely wasn't that kind of man. She gave me a playful squint, like she wasn't fully convinced, but she smiled. We kept talking. Madison said something that hit me. She told me that in the past 8 months since her divorce, she hadn't felt this light until she moved out of her old place. I looked around and I understood what she meant. I thanked her again for the meal, the wine, and the conversation. Then I glanced at my watch and realized how late it had gotten. I stood up to leave, grabbing my keys, telling Madison it was getting late and I should head home, but the moment I did, I felt my balance wasn't quite right. The wine had crept up on me. I hadn't realized how much I'd drunk while we were talking, but it was enough to make my head feel light and my steps a little unsure. I wasn't even halfway to the door when she tilted her head slightly and said, "You sure you're okay to drive?" I brushed it off with a half smile, but I could tell from the way she looked at me. She wasn't buying it. It wasn't like I was drunk, but I felt a little off. Madison pointed it out gently and then said it, "Just stay the night." She said it plainly, without any flirtation or suggestion. "Just worry." I hesitated. I didn't want to misread anything, didn't want to cross a line she wasn't even hinting at. But she insisted again. "You're not driving like this," she said. I didn't stand a chance against her beautifully concerned face. So my plan was to crash on the sofa and leave early the next morning. I told myself I'd keep everything respectful. Then she disappeared down the hallway, and I figured she was just tidying up for the night. But when she came back, she caught me off guard. "You want to take a quick shower? You were sweating earlier when you were fixing those cabinets." I froze, not because I didn't want to, but because I didn't know if I should. I gave her a polite, "Nah, I'm fine," but she didn't even blink. She looked me squarely in the eyes and said, "You're not a kid anymore, you know." She said that line with this strange mix of honesty and something warmer, like she saw through my caution and was telling me I didn't need to walk on eggshells. Truth is, she was right. I wouldn't have slept well feeling sticky and dusty. So I gave in. I cleaned up, changed into some clothes she offered, and when I came out, the vibe was different. We sat together in her living room again. The TV was on, but we weren't watching. She turned slightly toward me and said, "You've grown up good, you know." I laughed a little, unsure how to take it. But she kept her eyes on me. I took a breath, and without thinking too hard about it, I told her the truth, that she used to be my teenage crush. She smiled at that, like she had just uncovered a secret she already suspected. "Why didn't you ever say anything?" she asked. "I was 16, I told her. "You were 2 years older and way out of my league." She laughed and said, "Are you still scared of me now?" I didn't say a word. I just smiled, unsure how to answer that without sounding stupid. She looked at me for a moment and said, "If you had told me back then, maybe we could have been something." Then she admitted she thought I was cute, too, back in the day. It was strange, hearing that from someone I used to imagine in impossible what-ifs. Eventually, we both started getting sleepy. I stood up to move to the couch, but she stopped me again. "That thing's uncomfortable," she said. "Come to bed. I promise I'm not going to bite." I didn't jump at the offer. I paused, looked at her closely, trying to figure out if this was really what she wanted. I was worried she wasn't ready. Maybe she was still healing from everything she'd been through. But I went. And when I lay beside her, she turned to me and asked softly, "Will you hold me?" I didn't move right away. She could tell. She turned her head toward me and said, "I haven't been with anyone in over a year. I don't need your pity, William. Just your warmth." She made the first move, and we made love. When it was over, she curled into me and fell asleep in my arms. Honestly, it was like I had imagined when I was a teenager. The morning after felt quieter than I expected. Madison woke up before I did, and by the time I was sitting up and getting my bearings, she had already made coffee. She handed me a mug and sat beside me, and for a few seconds we just sipped in silence. Then she turned to me, looked me in the eyes, and said something I don't think I'll forget anytime soon. She said, "Thank you for giving me something I've missed for a while." She didn't need to explain. I knew what she meant. I nodded and told her, "You're welcome." But even as I said it, my thoughts were already drifting. See, walking to my car that morning was harder than lifting all her boxes the day before. My mind was a mess. I didn't regret what happened, but I couldn't stop asking myself, was it the right thing to do? The truth is, I liked it, and that part scares me a little. Because I don't know if this was a one-time thing for her. I don't even know if it should be more. She's still healing. And me? I'm not sure if I'm ready. So as I drove back home, I didn't have a plan. I didn't have a conclusion tied neatly with a bow. I just had a full head, a quiet heart, and more questions than answers. Maybe we'll talk again. Maybe we won't.